Hello there. I wanted to take some time today to talk about Pandemic Iberia. It's a version of the regular pandemic with some modifications and some different thematic things going on. Um, Pandemic is one of my favorite games, the regular version, and most of this one plays exactly the same, but there are some differences, and I always forget the differences. So I wanted to take this time to go through what those changes are so that I don't forget again. So setup is pretty much the same as regular Pandemic. You select the initial 9 cards, and then 3 of them you put 3 cubes on, and then 3 of them you put 2 cubes on, and then 3 of them you put 1 cube on, right? So that's all the same. Some of the stuff just looks a little bit different. These are the infection cards, just like usual, same spot. Same thing with the player cards. They're in the same usual spot. There's a bunch of different roles that are sort of reskinned for this new theme. So that's that. But then there's a couple other things that are very different. So I'm just looking at the instructions right now. One of the things that's handled differently is the way, depending on the number of players that are in the game, it instructs you to put different amounts of event cards in the deck. So usual Pandemic, you adjust the hand size depending on the people playing, but this game also you adjust the number of event cards. So you have to go through the player deck and make those adjustments, right? Another thing that's different are the starting positions. So in the normal Pandemic game, everybody starts off in Atlanta for the location of the CDC, but in this game, you look at your initial hand that you get dealt at the very beginning, and you choose one of those cities, and those are the choices that you have of where you can place it. So in this case, I chose Pamplona. So if you look at the player quick reference cards for actions, you'll notice a couple different things. One of them is the railroad and the train movement. So what that's all about is there are these train pieces, and for an action, you can place a railroad between 2 cities that you from the one that you are on. And the idea with it is if you place multiple railroads, you can move consecutively through them with just one move. Another concept that's talked about a lot in this game and referred to in many places are regions. So regions are just the polygons that are created by the lines of the routes in the game, right? So there's a region here, there's a region here. Anything that's enclosed by the lines is like a separate region. And that's where you'll be putting different tokens, like the Purify Water tokens, or this special prevention token that only one player, one role in the game can use. So another thing that's similar but different is that just like in the regular Pandemic, you have to do your research at a research station. Well, in this game, you do the research at hospitals, and there can only be one hospital of each color, and that's put on in an area of that matching color. So you can only have one of them, and you don't start with any in the game, as opposed to the regular Pandemic where you always start with one research station. Another thing with the research, right? So after you complete successfully the research and move the tokens up, in the regular Pandemic, it makes you've like cured the disease, and it makes it a lot easier to clear the board, clear the cubes from the board. But in this game, there's no cures, and so whenever, even after something has been researched, you still only remove one cube at a time, but you can use more cards to do the purify water action. Okay, so now I should talk about the purify water action. So it's a new action that uses these water tokens, and what you do is, if I'm right here, I am adjacent to 3 different regions, right? So there's this one, and then there's this one. So if I discard a card of the color of any city touching any of those regions, so then I can use the purify water action, which is to put two of those tokens in that region. So to put them in this region, I have to discard a red one because there's only red cities touching that region. But then for these 2 regions, I could use a red or a yellow card to discard to put the tokens there, because there's one yellow city touching the regions. So the advantage of having more research done is being able to spend those cards to perform the purify water action. So if this was the case, I could also use blue cards to do purify water into any of those 3 regions, even though there's no blue cities. And then the good part about the purify water action is that if there were to be a cube placed in any of the cities that are touching like the region that there are the purify water tokens, you can simply just remove one of the tokens and it'll prevent a cube from being placed in that city. I also wanted to mention about these cards. These cards are only used in like special challenges that you can read more about in the instruction booklet. But yeah, they're only to be used for the special challenges if you choose to do that. Yep, so that's pretty much all I can think of to say about the differences between Pandemic Iberia and regular Pandemic. Hopefully that was helpful.